Hey guys, it's your boy AK here. Welcome to my show. And well, I have already watched the Jurassic World Dominion. We're going to review this movie. It's a spoiler review, okay? So it means I'm gonna be giving away pretty much everything. So unless you have watched it or you haven't but you don't care, please do not watch the video any further. Make sure you watch the film if you actually want to watch it and care about it. And then come back here if you wish to hear my honest thoughts about what happened and how I felt about this movie. With that said, let's proceed. So, I will say that I expected overall the movie to be much worse, perhaps, but I'd still say it's, let's be honest here, I'm gonna be upfront. It was still shit. I still did not really like it all that much, but not nearly for the same kind of reasons that I thought I would, basically. Of course, we will get into the details. So I wanted to do it in a certain order. So I would like to perhaps start with the characters first, and then move on to creatures, and then maybe add some other extra bits and pieces if I feel like there is something more to say. I don't have any written notes about it, I'm completely improvising this, just saying whatever I think, so pardon if sometimes, it might feel like it's a bit all over the place. But let's go on ahead and start with the characters first. So, for convenience, we could maybe bring up this particular screen right here, and that's the screen cap from the scene where they all come together and they get attacked by Gigantosaurus. Now let's start from the whole point. First of all, if any of you are thinking that, oh my god, did they potentially destroy the legacy characters? No, they did not destroy them, in my opinion. What I think, however, is that overall the characters and the story itself was just very weak. It was badly executed. It was terribly written. There are just a lot of missed opportunities everywhere. And in some cases, some characters were just created for this movie only, and they were completely unnecessary. They were just not needed to be, I will explain in a moment. So, Ian Malcolm, for example, I think he had a very good part as far as I'm concerned. I didn't feel like his character was destroyed in any way or diminished. He was fairly true, although slightly different from what I thought he should be. But still, it was okay enough for me, but nothing remarkable, that's the problem. There was nothing particularly that stood out too much. With Ellie Sattler, it's kind of the same thing. She had a part to play together with Ian. In fact, they both played a part, especially regarding, infiltrating Biosyn so they could retrieve, necessary data so they could have them basically, indicted, if you will. I don't know what's the best way to put it. Just expose them, basically, I guess, to the general public and what they're all about. And their shenanigans, just to let general public know that they were getting scammed really badly, and there is a literal conspiracy going on, that is meant to, in many ways, hurt the public as well in the long term. Now, in regards to Alan Grant, I feel like there was absolutely nothing to do with him. It seems like they just put the character in as a token, as a trophy, just, to attract people, to try and bring more fans back to the theaters, and just to tick the box to say, look, we've got a legacy character here that you all love and care about. But they didn't actually give him anything to do. He literally was doing nothing. I'm honestly not sure what was even the point of him being in the movie. If Ellie and Ian at least they had a role to play in regards to how they were trying to go about Biosyn, Alan Grant really had just no place there. He was just like instead of basically actually being given something to do. He was just a tag along with Ellie. So I guess you could potentially even say that that was in a way a disrespect of his character. I think it wasn't necessarily denigration, rather than it's more just the lack of understanding of what to do with the character while desperately wanting to insert the character in because they just wanted you to go like, oh look, you filthy casuals, we got you your Alan Grant in here, so come and watch the movie, please, thank you. You know, it's one of those, it's typically a bait, I would say. It plays as a bait for the audience to play on nostalgia and try to capitalize on it somehow. And if it's working for some, I guess whatever, but well, let's just say I didn't go in there because of that. I went in there because I wanted to actually see what they were trying to do with the movie and how, in their opinion, what the epic conclusion to the saga looked like, at least according to them. And, well, as you can probably guess, I don't feel like it looks very good. I didn't like it. That's not to say that I hated it, I just didn't like it. So then we have these characters, Claire and Owen. So yes, they are returning characters from this new trilogy. And sorry, before we go to them, there was other few parts about Alan and Ellie, about their story. It's like they're trying to go back on the idea of Ellie having a family, but of course they do reference the fact that she does have kids who are already grown up, like, you know, students or whatever, and I think she's divorced her husband already as well. And then what happens is that at the end they end up kissing, and I'm just sitting there like, why? It was just so forced. I mean, I knew that they were gonna probably try to do something, but it's just so obvious what they're trying to do here, and it felt really forced and fake. There was just no chemistry there. They're both already in their age, and it kind of just felt like, I mean, I get it that, yeah, you could still perhaps, you know, the feelings for your old crush, if you will, can always come back. That's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible or, you know, you should completely discard it, but if they've just done it a little bit more organically, you know, it would have been a bit better, but it felt really forced and fake. And I just didn't buy it. I just sat there. I felt a bit cringe, to be honest, about it. So I was like, no. Sorry, guys, but I'm not really buying it. So yeah, there is that, and there was not much depth in terms of the explanation of why her whole family thing didn't work out. It's kind of obvious they were trying to fix this mistake that they did in JP3. I mean, I guess they tried, but it didn't really land as well as I think they thought they would. So I don't know. Let me know if you felt like it was good. I mean, I don't mind if you think it was okay. I suppose we might probably have different opinions on it, but I was not really buying into it. I felt like it was fake. Then of course we have Owen and Claire, now full-fledged couple basically. I didn't know why in the Fallen Kingdom they even had to break them up. I had no clue why they even had to do that, only to then show that they come together without Claire even actually calling her boyfriend, accountant, whoever it was at the time, to properly break up with him, you know? She just went on and started cheating on her boyfriend without even letting him know that they're no longer together and she's going back to her ex. I don't know, it just doesn't make her look very good in my opinion, but sorry, that's not Fallen Kingdom review, that's a Dominion review, so we'll try to refrain from these things here. But yes, I think that they were kind of their usual selves. There was nothing remarkable about them here. I didn't feel that way. I felt like it was a little bit dumb when Owen confused Gigantosaurus with Allosaurus, considering that he worked in Jurassic World, and we know for a fact that Allosaurus was in Jurassic World, even though it was not in 2015. It was implied that it was part of the park anyway when Fallen Kingdom happened, and that way he should have known what Allosaurus looked like, and I didn't see why all of a sudden a big-ass creature like that could be confused with an Allosaurus. That just felt like they were just treating him a little bit like he's a bit dumber than he actually is, which I didn't like particularly, to be honest. I felt it was very stupid. And Claire, I mean, I could understand why, you know, Ellie being like a badass, she's always kind of been a badass as well. Like, we already established her as that type of character. She's not your average, you know, chick, if you will, you know. But Claire was not like this initially, and it kind of started going a bit wrong for me ever since they first started showing her running in high heels from a T-Rex that should have, to be honest, just eaten her right there and then fucked off doing its own thing, while leaving Owen and the kids to be eaten and munched on by Indominus. So that's how it should have really ended, I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty certain I'm not the only one who actually probably makes that case, I suppose. So you'll probably know that I'm referencing the skits about, you know, how this movie should have ended, kind of, you know, video. But anyway, yes, I don't buy this whole Claire being a badass. It's almost like she's trying to be like Ellie number 2, but it didn't feel quite right to me. I felt like they should have, at least for balance and contrast, maybe made her a little bit more girly, if you will, in that sense, like a bit more reluctant to do certain things that Ellie, for example, would not have any problem doing at all, given that she's older, she's more experienced, B, she's just that type of character. We already know that from, you know, the way she has always been. So you could kind of maybe even have her slightly mentor Claire a little bit in that sense, so that Claire could have actually something to overcome, some kind of challenge, you know, difficulty, so that there would be a bit more work put into it. And otherwise we just see it like, we're both badasses, you know, we're both badasses, yeah, no matter. The good side of it, though, I did appreciate the fact that they were both showing that they were scared of insects and bugs, so I kind of thought that was a nice touch. At least they were not all super invincible and amazing, bestest ever, you know, like none of that, at least on their part, in my opinion. At least it didn't feel that way to me. So pretty generally okay. I wouldn't say it was remarkable, I wouldn't say it stood out, I wouldn't say it was really terrible. It was just, at times it felt like a little bit dumb, but otherwise it was okay, you know. I could still, you know, let it pass. It wasn't bad enough to basically annoy me too much or anything like that. Okay, next ones on this line are, what's this, Maisie and what's her name? I don't remember what her name was. Maybe that's the point. She was not very memorable to me. What was the name of the character? I think Kyla is her... Is it her name, or was it the actress's name? I don't remember. Yeah, anyway, well, yeah, I feel like this is a classic example of another just diversity hire character who had no reason to be there. But bear with me. There is a way to fix this, the way I thought it could have been fixed very easily, without having to add another character who obviously was nothing much at all in this movie, because it's a new character, there's no time to develop her, so she was just there to tick the boxes, while the same boxes could have been easily ticked if they were to do something that I will explain in a moment. But let's just quickly say that yes, her character was completely pointless. They were trying too much to just say, oh yeah, I'm like a black woman, I am also lesbian, as it's hinted heavily. Although I think the general audience didn't really care that much, they were just kind of like dismissing it, because most people came there to watch dinosaurs, not to watch, I don't know, a diversity hire badass women, you know, lesbian chicks, whatever. So yeah, I guess if she got eaten, that would have been kind of cool, I would have been okay with it, but she didn't, so yeah. That was another disappointment, by the way. None of these kind of characters ever get eaten. Like, it would have been pretty funny if Maisie, which is the next character on this lineup, if she got eaten at the end, even though they were trying so hard to save her, like she was a freaking messiah of some kind. And well, it would have been hilarious if Gigantosaurus actually ate her. Be like, fuck you guys. I would have loved to see that. Like, that would have been such a major troll. But yeah, too bad. But yeah, I mean, this whole trope with Maisie, you know, Lockwood, this whole Lockwood storyline just completely should have never happened from Fallen Kingdom. It also should not have been part of this movie. And this leads me to the next slide, which is to do with what our main actual protagonist is of this movie. And no, that's not a Gigantosaurus, by the way. Sorry, not protagonist, antagonist. Pardon my misuse of terms. Yeah, so the antagonist is not a Gigantosaurus, guys. Sorry to disappoint you, if in case that's what you were thinking. it's not Henry Wu either, by the way, in case that's what you were thinking. It's this thing that's lying on the table, and that is presumably a late Cretaceous giant locust, even though I'm not aware of any giant locusts of this size existing in late Cretaceous, not because if they did exist, they would have probably been from Carboniferous, so I don't understand why they had to say it was Cretaceous. If they said it was Carboniferous, you know, at least there would be a better justification for it, and it would have given like a bit more thought, you know, that yeah, I mean, we're trying to make this movie accurate, but yeah, accuracy my ass, and you will know why I said that. Now, these locusts are apparently our main antagonists in this movie because, well, apparently the only way to stop them is, well, not to mention that they're supposedly are unstoppable, they're not dying, so they're just flying around the world, basically devastating crops. I don't understand why farmers could not implement certain type of measures to stop them, perhaps, from doing it, and then just calling in armed forces of some kind, using flamers, or maybe like baiting them into some kind of a confined space, and just burning them alive altogether. I don't understand why they kind of presented it as a threat, because that just felt really fake. There were just so many different ways to deal with them. But no, we need to go, you know, it's like basically we need to fly from London to New York via, I don't know, Beijing and Moscow, and then take a train in between and take a boat in between, and then we arrive to fucking New York. But that's basically what they're trying to do here. So, which could have been a very easy solution to the problem, but then we would not have a movie. They decided that we need to have the DNA of Maisie Lockwood, which shows apparently, according to her mother, who actually gave birth, so she wasn't apparently a clone, as we find out. So yeah, and it's a bit weird, basically, the whole thing, how she managed to basically get herself pregnant without a male partner, using the same genetic trait that they apparently used on some of the dinosaurs in order to allow them to reproduce without needing a mate in case there are no mates available or something like that. Which, yeah, no, not really, but yeah, not buying it. Sorry, I'm not down for that. And then of course they decided that we're gonna use her DNA sample to be able to, for Henry Wu to be able to develop some kind of you know, reverse pathogen of some kind to address the problem of locusts, so that he would infect one locust, and then as it gets introduced to their population, it would just eventually make them all to go extinct, essentially. Yeah, you can tell it's a very long way to go about the problem, and yeah, I didn't really buy that. Which brings me to the other part. This is another well, I mean, maybe not really here, because I think we want to talk more about characters right now, and then we will get to the creatures, because if I were to bring the next slide as I was thinking, that would already go into creatures, so a bit too early for that, guys. Sorry, hang on a bit. Now, Henry Wu himself, nothing much to say, just completely nothing, not at all, nothing special about the character whatsoever, just, again, just a token character, nothing special. So I suppose it's safe to move on to some points that I wanted to make next. Now, remember when I said that, yeah, that diversity hire chick was just completely pointless? Well, hear me out a little bit. While she did not need to be there, that doesn't mean there were no other characters that could have actually been used. Now, these two characters, the one on the right is called Ramsey, again, another diversity hire character who did not need to be there at all. And their respective roles could have easily been given to already introduced characters that I think should have actually been there instead. And one of them we see on the left, Franklin. He did appear in a movie, but he kind of like just appeared briefly. They didn't give him a whole lot to do whatsoever. Could have instead used him in that position, and nothing would have changed. All it would have done, at least, is continued to develop the character that they have already brought in Fallen Kingdom, which I believe also did not really need to be there anyway from the get-go, but let's say we're looking at it for this movie's purposes review, you know, not for Fallen Kingdom. Fallen Kingdom happened, so there's no going back, right? Technically, Dominion also happened, so there's no going back, but I'm saying if I were to be at the stage where I need to come up with a story for Dominion, I would have used Franklin instead of Ramsey to basically fill in that position instead. it could have worked very easily, and I see no reason why they needed to hire another character. Again, completely pointless, useless character for just doing nothing whatsoever. I mean, in this case, of course, again, it would have redeemed if he got eaten, but I don't believe anything actually really happens with him. So yeah, nothing of that sort. So yeah, everybody is happy, honky-dory, just basically a bunch of bullshit, as usual. But let's move on to the next bit. More characters that I think could have been actually properly utilized, and missed opportunity as well. Obviously, the one on the left, again, appeared in the beginning of the movie. Zia, I believe, is her name in the movie. Could have utilized her. Yeah, I mean, I get it. She was a terrible biologist, or whatever the fuck she was, because she thought that blood from T-Rex could work with blood of a completely different species of an animal, Velociraptor. But yeah, okay, I'm willing to forgive her for that to a degree, if they actually brought her back in properly and given her some kind of a decent role. As a matter of fact, you could maybe even make a case that she could have been, a good replacement for, this chick who was the previous one, the one that I first mentioned on the casting, with the main cast. So, I mean, they could have at least used her for that, but let's say get Barry to be on that part as well. I would have thought that it would have been nice if they both ended up as the contrabandist workers, but at the same time, maybe they could have been like actually undercover for the operations to eventually set up and expose the poachers and Biosyn and their dealings, to kind of have this whole thing going. And at the same time, Franklin would have been from their office, working together with Malcolm and Ellie, and maybe even somehow get Grant on board with something of this sort, for God's sake. But yeah, those were my ideas that I think they could have implemented to actually develop characters that are already there. Especially Barry had a very good potential. They never actually given him any screen time in Fallen Kingdom properly or anything, if I remember correctly. I don't know why. That was just, big question I always had. They didn't really give him a whole lot to do in this movie either. I think that they could have actually implemented him a bit more too. And Omar Sy is a good actor. I like him, and I think his character could have been just given a lot more to do in this movie, and should have been given more to do in this movie, but they didn't do it. Now, the next set of characters they could have brought in as well, and again, a missed opportunity, which I will have to elaborate here, you will know why, but is these ones here. Basically, Zac and Gray, I mean, I don't know, they're not compulsory, but they would have grown by now. We could have actually had them, do something useful as well, perhaps, to help their aunt Claire or whatever, but fair enough, they didn't get it in, but, there was something they could have done with them, at least just to kind of not completely waste them, since they were pretty much the protagonists of the first film in this new trilogy, so I thought might as well maybe do something with them, but yeah, they never decided to do anything with them at that point. Lowery, now this one is an important part. Pause the video if you want to read this excerpt from the article with his interview, but apparently, according to him at least, he was actually signed up to do the movie to do a part in this movie. I don't know how much he was gonna do. It's a shame that he never made it, but although the excuse he gives is that because of the pandemic, then when that kind of the whole thing with the dates never lined up, but I kind of call a bit of a bullshit on it. I don't believe that's really that great of an excuse, to be honest. Like, I don't know, I don't buy it personally. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's a convincing enough answer or not? I personally don't buy it. I think there was more behind that. Maybe he just didn't want to do it and came up with a good answer for the press, so that it doesn't create any kind of rumors. He just wanted to give them something that would satisfy everyone and just leave it at that. Maybe he just didn't want to come back to the franchise, and maybe that could explain why he never came back for the second film either. But yeah, still lots of wasted potential in my opinion. And as far as characters went, very boring dialogues, mostly not very well written, very bland, just really nothing. It's just like, I mean, I could almost say it's like water with no flavor, but even that makes water taste somewhat sweet in comparison, to be honest. I don't know what's the best way to describe it, but that's probably how it is when it comes to the characters. Okay, now that we're done with the characters, let's go into the creatures. So let's go to the one that we already know, and because it ties in with our previous mazy characters, and the reason why is that, well, remember that thing I mentioned about the ability to reproduce without a mate? Well, Blue did that, and apparently if that is something that they do, it becomes an identical genetic copy of the other, well, of the parent. I suppose in this case mother, but I don't know if they imply that males can do that. I presume it's only females who can do that, I suppose, perhaps, because they can lay an egg or they can, carry and then perform the labor. I guess that's what it's implied. So, okay. This happened basically. They called this new dinosaur Beta. I don't understand why they decided to call her Beta. It seems like they just couldn't come up with a decent name for a new dinosaur character to go together with Blue. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think Best and Slot and Gaming Beaver are just much better at coming up with names, and they are doing this shit for free, so I don't understand why Universal could not do it, but yeah, beats me. So basically Biosyn also captures Beta, because they want, for the same reason, in fact, that's because Henry Wu wants to study Beta and wants to study Maisie, because they both are exactly the same phenomenon, but in slightly different parallels. So yeah, basically that was a thing that we could completely do without. Not to mention that the whole movie, like, why was the Locust even there as an antagonist if we were watching a movie with dinosaurs? It felt like, why do we have to look at fucking locusts? I don't care about stupid locusts. I mean, I don't give a shit. Why would we want to watch something like that in a dinosaur movie? I don't get it. But anyway, beats me, I guess. Let's now go into some creature designs, and this is where I think it's gonna get the juicy, meaty part of it. So I am going to probably start with this one. So, no, that is not a Velociraptor, by the way. That's not an attempt to bring back anything remotely close looking to a Velociraptor from the Lost World, which they could have done, by the way, considering that they actually confirmed that dinosaurs from Sorna have been shipped over into the Bison Sanctuary. But these are apparently what is known as Atrociraptors. I don't know why they needed them. It's basically a copy and paste of JP Raptors with different heads, basically, and slightly different color schemes, pretty much. Which basically, if you were to look at it like this, you could easily say that all the ones except for the one that is the second from the left, all other ones, they could qualify as variations of the male tiger raptors, basically, if you will, just with slightly different patterns, and one of them being the albino. I believe the online articles also, or wikis called the albino ghost, which is very original of you to do, by the way, fandom wiki. Using an albino looking at you, ghost from Game of Thrones, like very original. Okay, now, they could have just used these as Velociraptors, really. There was no reason for them to introduce them as a new species. I mean, I don't have anything to say about their designs. They're very JP-esque, I guess. But if they've actually done their designs more like the actual JP Raptors and just stuck with these color schemes, I think that would have worked perfectly well. I'm not particularly mad about the way they look overall. I just don't see why they needed to introduce them as completely new species if they could have just used Velociraptors, because Velociraptors are not extinct. Blue is not last of her kind. We know they brought dinosaurs from the Isla Sorna, and there are many Velociraptors there too, so I don't understand why that was not implemented at all. This is one of the missed opportunities regarding, addressing the Isla Sorna part, that they could have actually brought back a little bit. would have been nice if they did that, but okay. But this is not the worst part, of course. We are gonna go next. This one, yeah, this is supposed to be a Terracinosaurus. I am not convinced that this is a proper Terracinosaurus. It's very funny how they are trying to convince the audience, and this is what they were selling this whole product as, that, oh, it's very accurate, you know. Colin Trevorrow, in fact, was caught in an article somewhere saying that something about some movie that, or whatever the fuck it was, I don't remember what it was, but he was calling someone else's creature designs dragons, while maybe not realizing the irony that his own designs, which we will get into, look more like dragons as well than actual dinosaurs. Ah, Colin, mate, I mean, you're probably tripping. And yeah, do let me know what kind of stuff this is that you were, you know, having a go with. Cheat, wink, wink, you know. Right, so, yeah, Terracinosaurus, again, didn't feel like it was a properly designed Terracinosaurus to me. Behavior-wise, it was interesting to see that they've at least trying to show another aggressive herbivore. But I will tell you something that I have a problem with later, when we get to the one of the next and last probably creatures, which we will get into, and I will explain. There's something else happening with Terracinosaurus that I have a problem with. Now, otherwise I don't have a problem with it. It's generally okay, the way it was behaving, the way it was portrayed. It was okay, but I didn't like, obviously, the models. It doesn't look like an animal, it still looks like a dragon for Elden Ring to me. Just with a bunch of hair and big claws and smaller head, that's it. And no wings, obviously. Now, this is where it starts getting a bit more ridiculous. Yeah, this is supposed to be a Pyroraptor, you know, an accurate dinosaur in the movie, right? Accurate. Look at these feet. I don't know what to say about that. It's weird as hell. They look completely disproportionate, and the head looks ridiculous. Look at the eye positioning. It's just, and oh my god, everything about this is just completely wrong. But the other funny part is that it was swimming better than a freaking dolphin as well. Which I don't believe we knew. If we are talking about accuracy, I don't believe we actually have anything to prove or suggest, at least, that dromaeosaurids could swim like that, or at the same level as dolphins could. I don't know, guys, what you think, but I don't believe there is evidence to support that. So, accuracy my ass, I guess. Then, of course, the fact that overall it looks like basically a slightly, you know, basically a JP Raptor with a bunch of feathers stuck to it and rearranged face, which, I don't know, I struggle to tell if it got whacked with Ankylosaurus tail club or it got punched by Mike Tyson. I have no idea what happened to it, but that's kind of what it gives off to me. So, yeah, that's a big fail here. Now, the next creature, of course, Gigantosaurus, or Gigantosaurus, I don't know how you prefer to pronounce it. I go with Gigantosaurus. Now, this, again, is a good dragon without wings that could work very well. Or it could be like a Carnosaur for Warhammer Fantasy, perhaps. It could work well as an Elden Ring boss, perhaps. It could work probably quite well, you know, if you look up on Etsy, there are these fantasy-looking dinosaur-ish miniatures that are inspired by Dinotopia, but they kind of are designed, you know, to look more like fantasy creatures. This would fit very nicely. In fact, all of these creatures, excuse me, would fit very nicely with with this range, but not with even JP models, to be honest. Like, even these ones, I don't think they necessarily understand that these kind of designs, they don't fit very well with that stuff. It just doesn't work. So yeah, it's a very poor design choice. I mean, they could have just used Jurassic World Evolution's Gigantosaurus. But then, of course, they would have no excuse, perhaps, to use it as the biggest carnivore ever, which we also know is completely incorrect. There was a... We'll show you the next scene, which happened in the movie. That's not the final scene, by the way. It's this one right here. It was a confrontation between T-Rex and Gigantosaurus, which is where Gigantosaurus gets properly introduced as the biggest carnivore ever on the land. And what happens is that they have a go at one another for a bit, and then T-Rex gets bitten in the face and basically decides to fuck off. And that's basically it in that confrontation. While what should have really happened, if we are going by the accuracy, is that T-Rex A is bigger, because if you look at their side profiles, their dimensions would be almost the same, really, plus minus, give or take. Their height would be almost the same as well, although T-Rex, I believe, is actually slightly taller at the hips. And but not by much, perhaps, not very noticeable. I would probably say not very much noticeable. About the same, let's just say it's about the same. But once you start looking at them from the top or from the front, you will notice that T-Rex is almost twice as wide. And yeah, that thing being the T-Rex, that is, it would have been probably able to break that Giga in half if it bit its face first or something like that. It would not be bullied around like that quite easily, I would say. Just something to understand, that if they're saying that the movie itself actually has the audacity to claim that all these creatures that Biosyn bred in this sanctuary are actually, basically, they are the genome, you know, they're not modified, nothing. They are exactly 100% identical. So the movie itself makes that claim. It's not even people behind the scenes trying to say something like that, which, again, there were many instances of that. You know who I'm talking about, and yeah, that's obviously bullshit. But never mind that, I'm talking about the fact that the movie itself has the audacity to claim it. And I just completely, like, I was pretty much done at that point. I was just sitting there cringing, like, how can you make that claim and try to sell it? It's just like, who do you expect is watching this? Probably dinosaur fans, okay? So if there are dinosaur fans, do you think they don't know that what you're trying to peddle and claim is just completely incorrect and looks goofy as fuck? Not to mention that it doesn't resemble the real animals at all. So, you know, even some of the Jurassic Park's original designs from the first and second films, they resemble their original counterparts much better than what these ones claim to be the new accurate dinosaurs do when it comes to their respective counterparts. So, yeah, lots of problems with that. And since we are talking about Gigantosaurus versus T-Rex, yes, the final confrontation does happen. It's kind of hard to tell whether this was the same T-Rex as the original Nublar T-Rex, or whether it was a different T-Rex this time. That just looked very similar to it. I could not really tell. And but no matter, the whole point is that it's basically a T-Rex. Now, I remember that what happened was that after they had a bit of a go at one another, T-Rex gets knocked out by Gigantosaurus by being tossed at the building. Ellie decides for some reason that she should save it. I don't know why she needed to do that. No idea what was the whole point. Why did she all of a sudden feel sentimental about that T-Rex getting, taken out by the Giga? I had no idea why, but whatever. It happened, basically. So Giga gets slightly distracted, and then after that what we see is, for some unknown reason, beats me why, but Terracinosaurus decides to show up there. A herbivore that, even though it's an aggressive herbivore, but it's not a carnivore that should be involved. It's not like it's a carnivore. At first it looks like it's just basically carnivores having their turf wars, which is fair enough. But then Terracinosaurus shows up and starts having a go at Gigantosaurus. For some reason, Gigantosaurus all of a sudden is no longer super bad and powerful. All of a sudden, Terracinosaurus can just wave its hands at it a little bit, and that's enough to stop it completely from basically trying to go for its head or neck, which is much easier to do than it would have been normally for a T-Rex, for example. But yeah, for some reason it decides that it's all of a sudden becoming weak. you know, like first it was the baddest and everything, but now all of a sudden it's weak as hell. And then T-Rex wakes up from its knockout state, approaches, has a quick go at the Giga, pushes it, and Terracinosaurus just basically kind of lifts its claws up at a nice angle and stabs the Giga, and yeah, fatality basically, which kind of looks like they basically allied together with the T-Rex, and I was just like, why is this happening? This is dumb. Now I'll tell you what I think could have happened, which is where I get to another missed opportunity of this whole part. That could have actually also maybe even utilized some more of that idea of how they would perhaps try to explore the so-called accuracy of their animals a bit more. Now, first of all, if they had a Gigantosaurus design that was a bit more, well, true to the real thing, that would be at the starting point. But regarding T-Rex, this was a huge opportunity for them to introduce, to bring back the iconic male T-Rex from the second film. And it could have been the one that could have come in and actually kicked Gigantosaurus' ass without maybe even having to kill it. So the idea would have been that they are just basically acting like animals, basically having turf wars, and Grant could have maybe given some kind of comment later about it, saying that yeah, they need to start splitting large carnivores apart because it's causing them, you know, to engage too much. This could negatively impact their well-being. It's cruelty to animals, you know, like they could have tried to use that to make the case that they should not have apex carnivores, you know, placed together like this, basically, in one place, you know. So, and that could have made a good case for it, so that they had one T-Rex that earlier tried to have a go at this Giga, but okay, didn't work out. T-Rex had to flee. Next time they come together again, maybe. This time we have the so-called battle veteran, because he had the scars as well, which would have looked pretty badass if he appeared, like, you know, having a go at this. And yeah, it would have been a really cool thing to see. And the reason I say this is because we actually see a shot at the ending that shows us there are actually 3 T-Rexes there. So, of course, the movie itself does not tell us where they're from. The movie does hint, however, and tell us that a lot of dinosaurs, in fact many of them, if not all of them, from Sorna have been transported into that sanctuary. Then, of course, outside of the movie, even though I don't treat these kind of comments as canon, but apparently it was intended by Colin Trevorrow as well to show that these were indeed the T-Rex couple from The Lost World. So, yeah, if that's the case, then why did we not see that male T-Rex show up instead? That would have made a lot more sense. Or if they both, in fact, 2 of them could have showed up and just kind of be like, okay, so it's like our turf, and have that male basically go against that Giga, just give him like a nasty bite in the face and just force it to retreat, rather than even having to kill the Giga anyway. And then what they could have shown later, that could have just shown how they in the end managed to reallocate them into different places, so they would not be able to come together anymore. Maybe see some battle scars of that Giga as well, and you know, just show that these animals after all ended up being all fine and everything. You know, they've managed to kind of rebalance it a bit better once. And Grant could have actually contributed to that quite a lot too. You know, he could have really made a good case on it, and that would have shown how basically they're trying to say like, yeah, okay, so if you're trying to actually really accurately reproduce this, you cannot put together apex predators like that. It's a recipe for disaster, basically, for these animals specifically. So yeah, that was very disappointing, of course, of how this whole thing happened. It was very stupid. It was very awesome, bro. Completely not believable to me. Just really dumb. And just cheap as well, I guess. I think there was also a shot somewhere with JP3 Raptors, which I missed in the movie. But again, why did they not just bring them in as well? And instead of having to introduce these Velociraptors, I don't get it. Oof. Missed opportunities, you know, guys, missed opportunities everywhere. And then we also see some shots about how during the time when the narrator for some reason starts preaching at the audience about, you know, just basically talking a bunch of rubbish, which I didn't ever care about, to be honest. But they could have implemented this better through the characters and have the characters try to explain that stuff to us. Instead, what they were doing is they were preaching at the audience, like from the narration point of view. And then they were showing, how Quetzalcoatlus were flying amongst modern day birds in the same flocks. They were showing Parasaurolophus running around in the same herds as horses. Just a bunch of really dumb kind of stuff that I felt like was completely unrealistic. It would never happen, or not in the same way that they're showing, at least. And I just really didn't like it, to be honest. So for something that they claimed to have been this epic conclusion to the saga, it felt extremely underwhelming and just overall very weak. And yeah, well, I guess that brings me to the main conclusion, that it's really just overall very weak, full of missed opportunities that on top of one another. That's really how to describe this movie the best. It's just a bunch of missed opportunities where they could have addressed and fixed a lot of previously made errors, maybe to the best degree possible. They could have actually capitalized on a lot of different scenes, both with characters maybe and specifically with dinosaurs, and they just completely failed to do it. Instead, we were listening to a bunch of nonsense about locusts and all that crap, about the clone human Maisie, who again just doesn't need to be there, just completely pointless character altogether. We had diversity hire characters who again could have been replaced and just given the roles by already established diversity hire characters, which I believe at the time, at least in case of Barry, I don't believe he was a diversity hire at the time. He was actually a legit character. And in case of Franklin, okay, he might have been initially, like, he came off to me as a diversity hire at first, but okay, fair enough. Why don't we just build him up more, just develop him more? But no, they decided to completely abandon them and just went with new ones that they didn't have time to develop and write properly, and we ended up with a bit of a clusterfuck in that sense. So yeah, that basically concludes probably my review on Jurassic World Dominion. I suppose one of the other interesting and ironic parts about it is that the premise and the idea itself was not that bad, really. The setting, the atmosphere, the environments, it's not really terrible. But the way it was written and the way it was done, that's what I think really failed. It just shows how utterly incompetent the writing side of things really was. And just Colin Trevorrow, I guess, was a little bit too arrogant to think that his trilogy could actually sit at the same table with the original 1993 Jurassic Park. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, but yeah, I don't think we are thinking the same thing here, Colin. I'm sorry to say that. But then, of course, this whole idea, that when you start looking at it, this movie makes it very funny to me that, you see, it looks like we just don't need Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom anymore, or Jurassic Park 3 for that matter. We could have, like, this movie, if it was well written and fixed up properly the way I think it could have been done, this movie could have and should have been the JP3, with Bioscene and everything, the stuff that they never included in the second film, which should have been there as part of the story to be more closer to the original books. This could have made potentially a good story for Jurassic Park 3. If this was a Jurassic Park 3 and the final to the legacy, to the saga, but if it was better written, properly written, and let's say if they had some additional characters there and then, and they just went with a bit of a time skip forward like that, that would have actually been decent. It would have been pretty decent, I think. I don't know if it would have turned out better than, much better than The Lost World, Jurassic Park. It could have, it had a potential. If it was written well, it could have actually turned out to be pretty damn good. But yeah, we have what we have, guys. So let me know what you think about the movie if you've already seen it. Let me know what you think about my review, and also let me know what you think about my conclusion in regards to that if this movie was actually done right, if it was done well, it could have just worked as a JP3 as it should have been, basically. Like this movie, do you agree that this could have and should have probably just been Jurassic Park 3 with certain alterations that could have just improved the movie quality, which I have mentioned already throughout the review. Let me know what you think about that as well. So, with that in mind, I want to thank you for staying and listening this long to this podcast, and I hope, if you are new, that you would be willing to subscribe and give my other videos a watch. And maybe let me know what else you'd like to see. Until then, there are some other things that I've got coming up. There will be at least 2 or 3 more videos being uploaded, not in a distant future, I will say. So stay tuned for that. And thanks very much once again for watching and listening this long. And regardless of whether you agree or disagree, still thank you for coming and thank you for checking this out. My name is TRex once again, and I will see you guys later. Thank you and goodbye.